Looking to my left, I saw the news reporter and cameraman walking back with slight fear on their faces. Only with fear. Or perhaps, rather, anticipation. Were they hoping Mary would start shooting? This made me think a little about reporters. "Mary, lower the barrel. They are gone." He broke his ankle after jumping from his bedroom window, and Chris took him to hospital. I wasn't sure if Chris had done something like that, but I hoped she listened to me. She knew Mary well enough to know that she sometimes lost her temper easily, and when that happened, she always went beyond madness. I hoped that I could calm her down before she did something stupid. "I'll shoot them both. The asshole and the bitch will both be dead meat the next time I see them. Damn it." "Mary, calm down. I took care of most of it, and no matter what, if you do what you threaten, you'll be the one who suffers for all this crap. I almost followed your path, but a close friend dissuaded me." "Who dissuaded you?" "Josh. He said he kind of liked me and didn't want to see me sitting in a jail cell for the next 10 or 20 years. If you keep this up, that's where you'll end up. Do you really think they're worth all this pain and suffering? Charlie, look what they're doing. And right under our noses." Tears welled up in her eyes, and then her hands dropped. Finally, I felt safe enough to step in and take the gun from her hands. She reluctantly gave it to me, and I just put it in her pickup. I also took the keys out of the ignition and locked it, putting the keys in my pocket just in case. I turned and hugged her. So we stood there looking at the crowd and the cameras. "Mary, would you like to go and talk to this old lady?" We looked at each other and saw Lady Fraser standing next to Chris's wrecked pickup truck. She held out her hand, and Mary, weeping, stepped forward and took them in hers. I looked around for the judge, but didn't see him anywhere. He must have been in court. "Yes, I'd like that. Charlie, are you coming too?" "No, I need to chop some wood before nightfall. It's better to do this while I have such help." Mrs. Fraser looked at me intently and then nodded. "Come back to me in an hour or so, Charles. I will wait for you." "Yes, ma'am. In 1 hour, I will." I heard my friends behind me mutter to themselves, "Oh yes, hiding behind skirts, just like in the good old days. He always thinks it's because of him that the old ladies get upset and want to talk to him. This way he gets rid of most of the work. Hey, Charlie, do you think we can cut him up in an hour? There's a lot of wood here." "Yes, yes, yes," I answered. "I understand. But you also understand. When old Fraser says, 'Be there at such and such a time,' you better be there. You've heard it all and done it all, so fuck off." They laughed and proceeded to cut the rest of the attraction into pieces. "Charlie Wilson, you are under arrest." I turned around and saw local police officers standing by their car, trying to look important. The news camera was still filming us when they started to approach. My friends stopped what they were doing and prepared to fight them. I waved it off. Arrested for what? Destruction of private property, vandalism, attempted murder, and anything else we can find that happened here. As a matter of fact, cutting down this tree without permission will also do. Firstly, I have permission to cut down the tree. Secondly, the tree fell badly, and its collision with those two pickup trucks was a complete accident. You cannot prove otherwise. Thirdly, does the judge know that you are here, pestering me? Last but certainly not least, attempted murder? Don't you understand that if I wanted to kill this asshole, he would already be dead? Who do you take me for? I have common sense, unlike both of you. Come on, get out of here." This last remark made them look at each other and then silently turn and walk away. The judge I was talking about is a real judge. He is my friend and neighbor. Despite everything that had happened recently, he still acted like and was a good friend. They didn't want to deal with the judge because he could and would make their lives miserable for a long, long time. An hour later, I was walking along the sidewalk to see old Fraser. The guys were finishing cutting the sections and Jed was busy splitting the wood from each section. Two more of my friends showed up with their pickup trucks and trailers and were busily loading up the split wood to transport it to Mrs. Fraser's barn. They sent me away, saying that I didn't work for shit and might as well go to old lady Fraser. To be honest, I needed a break, at least to recover a little. It was a hard day. Sitting down in a large, soft, and very ancient chair in Mrs. Fraser's living room, I saw Mary sitting calm and quiet. Her eyes were red, but overall she was much better than she had been recently. I dropped the keys to her pickup truck into her lap. I think you've calmed down and won't make me worry now, right? Yes. I think now I won't go hunting anymore, although tomorrow I will hunt for a lawyer, she answered sadly. My lawyer said he will help you if you want. In some ways, it will be easier since he now has a lot of information about both of them. Of course, you might need your own. It's just an idea, that's all. I will talk to him. With her. I was told that she is the best in these parts. Okay, then I'll go see her. How are you, Charlie? It must be very painful to learn this. I'll be fine, although I think it will take some time. You and we're both in so much pain. I think we can lean on each other from time to time. If you want, that is. I don't mean anything other than talking and stuff, you know. It's just like you, Charlie. You're in a lot of pain right now, too, and instead of worrying about yourself, you keep worrying about me. I guess we'll talk to each other, but you're right about there not being much more. I don't think I'll be able to experience anything else for a while. I nodded, understanding her feelings perfectly. What was it like to watch that old tree crush their trucks? The feeling is great. I admit I am still upset that I had to cut down this tree, but the cause it served, it was worth it. I'm sure Pete will regret changing his insurance. Does he still owe a lot? I asked, just to reinforce my guess as to how much I figured he was still stuck behind that big pile of scrap metal. 31,900 and some change. Yes, it will cost him dearly, but not as expensive as I'm going to screw him. Do you think she and Chris will stay together? I asked, surprised at how much she loved this asshole. I don't know what she saw in him, and if I'm not mistaken, as soon as he is discharged from the hospital, he will run away. This is the second time I've caught him cheating, and if Chris dates him, he'll get a lot of heritage. She was damn stupid to lose you like that, so maybe she's not as smart as I always thought. Well, Pete has his own business. That's already something. Mary started laughing loudly. I must have looked very embarrassed at that moment. Oh God, this is my business, and has always been mine. My name is on the land title, business licenses are in my name, as are loans and other legal matters. He doesn't have a damn thing. I thought he owned everything, and you work for him? Did he tell you that? Well, exactly, knowing him. This business has always been mine. He just worked as a manager. I inherited it from a lonely uncle when he died. Pete also had nothing to do with him growing up the way he did, to be honest. It has always been mine, and it was my efforts that brought it to the state in which it exists now. Pete is the figurehead. Oh, I think you'll be fine. In any case, better than mine. This is good. I'm glad that at least one of us will be a winner in this deal. I guess Chris will have to look for another job. Oh, Charlie, you'll be fine too. I know you, and I know how this whole damn city feels about you. Everything will be all right, believe me. Chris, on the other hand, I heard my ex-wife's future employment dying at these words. At that moment, Mrs. Fraser came in with cups of coffee. So, young man, have you talked to the judge yet? No, Mrs. Fraser, this is not quite the right time for this. Maybe in a month or two. Call him and make an appointment right now. He's furious about what happened between you and Chris. He's angrier than a fury at Pete and Chris. He thinks highly of you, as do I. Judge Fraser can't do anything about it, ma'am. Honey, he can. Because of all this, you filed for divorce from Chris. A judge will likely preside over the trial. He'll make sure neither she nor Pete ditch you. He owes it to you, he said so himself. Ma'am, the judge doesn't owe me anything. You've given his family a lot over the years, Charles. The firewood given to us is just the tip of the iceberg, and you know it. You always took care of me, even when my worthless grandson did dirty tricks on you. That's a different matter, Mrs. Fraser. That's not the point. Young man, Pete Fraser has our last name, and he may be my grandson, but he's a worthless bastard. What he did here today will live on in my family's memories for years to come, and not with pride and joy. You have always been the best friend to him, Max, and all of us. He, like no one else, should have known that you would not like him playing with your wife. We just hoped you wouldn't kill him, although he certainly deserves it. That's why it's so damn hard. We all love you, son. Even the stupid little man Pete has turned into. It just kills us. Thank you, Mrs. Fraser. It was quite unpleasant. Unpleasant? Unpleasant? Damn it, son, you are a master of understatement. By the way, why don't you call me Old Fraser now? Isn't that what you call me when I'm out of earshot? I blushed deeply. Mary jumped and looked at her in shock. What? Didn't you realize that I always knew that everyone called me Old Fraser? Charles, you of all people should know that I know everything. Yes, you are right, ma'am. I regret that. There's no need to apologize, young man, she began irritably. I'm used to considering it an honor. As soon as you say Old Fraser, everyone knows who you're talking about, and don't think I don't know that you all respect me deeply, despite the fact that some consider it disrespectful. I like it anyway. After all, I'm no longer a naive girl. Yes, ma'am. Now, go call the judge. He expects a call soon. He has a lot to tell you, and I've known him for almost 50 years, and he always gave damn good advice to those who would listen. Yes, ma'am. Have you ever felt like a schoolboy who was caught smoking in the boys' room? Or maybe spitting chewed paper in class? That's what Old Fraser could do with a few words. She had her own way of doing things. She has always respected honesty, and if you are honest about everything you feel, she will always show you respect. Her husband, a judge, is much the same. They are pillars of the community and Pete and Max's grandparents. It's a pretty mess we have here. Will you kick her out, Charles? Mrs. Fraser continued. Yes. I recently served her with divorce papers. I think she took Pete to the hospital. I hope so. He broke his ankle. He's damn lucky if that's all he broke. We were afraid that you would break his neck or perhaps shoot him. By the way, well done for felling that tree. I've never seen anything better. Thank you. I bet you're already making the case like it was an accident during a routine tree cut, aren't you? Yes. I didn't know if I should talk about all this with Mrs. Fraser. That is, with Old Fraser. There was more internal stress in the barrel than I initially thought. That's what made him turn this way. Oh, ho, ho. Hold your face like a brick and tell as much as you can, young man. I was here. I know you. And I know that there is not a single soul in the area who would feel the forest better than you. That's what I'm afraid of. That's why the judge wants to talk to you. He has some very important legal advice for you. I think he wants to keep you out of his system. You know he's worried about you, Charles. Me too. Thank you, ma'am. And yeah, good move with the cat litter under the trucks, young man. I appreciate you taking care to keep the oil and antifreeze from running down the drain. Blushing, I nodded my head. Mary looked at me with undisguised awe. Did you plan all this? Her question hung in the air as Old Fraser looked at me and burst out laughing. Mary, 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 I thought you knew. Charles planned everything, every step. It may have been pure luck that Pete broke his ankle during his wild leap from his bedroom window, but everything else was planned down to the second. Remind me never to make you angry, Charlie. It's not such a big problem, Mary. You could have knocked that tree down on Pete while he was in his pickup truck. Why didn't you do that? Like I told you, they're not worth going to jail over. They made their bed, so to speak, and now they have to lie in their damn mess. She really loved that Charlie truck. Yes, Mary, I did. Obviously more than me. Mrs. Fraser came up behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. I think we've all forgotten how much you put into it, Charles. I'm so sorry things turned out this way. It's okay, Mrs. Fraser. What did I just tell you? You can call me Old Fraser. I like it. Okay, Mrs. Fraser. Well, that is Old Fraser. I blushed even more at the thought of calling her that to her face. I wish I had never heard such words about her. I'm lucky that she decided to accept the nickname as respectful, despite how it sounds. I'd better go and help the guys. There are a lot of logs that need to be chopped for firewood. Son, they are already finished. Jed and Max unload the last trailer in my woodshed. They are very fast when they want to be. I bet they could use a couple of beers right now. Maybe you should offer them a treat at the tavern. Good idea, Mrs. Fraser. I will do so. Charles, no matter what happens, you are a good person. You won't find anything better. Can you hear me? Yes, ma'am. I can hear you. I hugged Mary and old Fraser and headed out. The beer was pretty tasty considering all that. All the guys joked with me, cheering me up despite the situation. They are good friends of the best kind. Max, of course, is nothing like Pete. The fact that he talked about how someone replaced his real brother with Pete at the birth was very opportune. Many times I heard him say that I was more like his brother than Pete. We grew up together, so now I've heard it for years. I spent the next 4 nights alone. The old house seemed huge and empty. A friend of a friend called Josh and told him that Chris was spending time with his parents. Her parents are not at all happy about the situation, but she is their only daughter. And blood is not water. I am not surprised. One evening, the judge called me home and we talked. He was concerned about my well-being and also wanted to talk about some legal intricacies, do's and don'ts. He didn't want me to end up in jail, and I came very close to that, dropping the old tree where I dumped it. He made a few maneuvers on my behalf, but he had to tell me how and why so that our stories would somehow match. Don't get me wrong, he didn't lie for me or help me break the law, just pointing out what I should say to avoid certain aspects, how to phrase certain things to keep the wolves at bay, and how to approach my upcoming divorce. 2 months later, after Chris's lawyer was rebuffed by the judge at a hearing, the judge flew into a rage and virtually threw out the divorce proceedings. After some time of deliberation, he reconvened and made a decision that amazed my lawyer and stunned Chris's lawyer. I hereby consent to the said divorce on the terms and conditions originally presented to this court. I am granting Mr. Charles Masters' motion without reopening. And no, you cannot appeal this decision, Chris. For the last 2 months, you've been trying to drag things out. I can only assume that you are trying to get Charles to drop his divorce suit against you, and I cannot agree with your tactics. On top of that, I'm fucking sick of it. You did it, and now you must understand that it is time to pay. Charles offered half of the total property, and in my opinion, this is more than fair. Lawyer Chris did not expect the suddenness of the decision and was taken by surprise, but soon became involved again. Your Honor, my client deserves better. She's supported marriage in the past and... Young man, if you continue, I will find your words in contempt of court. I'll throw your brat in jail and maybe throw away the key. Am I making myself clear? Yes, sir. Your Honor, sir. Chris, I want to say a few words to you before you go. Alone. The judge looked sad as Chris said this. We were all removed. I was interested in what the judge was going to discuss with Chris, but at that moment, I just wanted to get out of the courtroom and get some fresh air. Chris, I don't quite understand what you're trying to achieve. I know you don't want a divorce, but can't you see how rudely you rubbed your affair with Pete in Charles's face? Dear God, young woman, you traded a nice car for a pickup truck that looked exactly like his. What were you thinking about? Chris looked at the floor. She didn't know what to tell the judge. She had an affair with the man's grandson, who was her husband's friend. She still didn't know how or why it all happened. All she knew was that the little playful attraction had escalated into a rather dangerous situation. Over the past months, she had been thinking and trying to figure out why she did this to her husband, and she had no answer other than, just because I could. And this did not suit her feelings. She knew she screwed up. She also finally realized that she had no way to fix the situation. Now the judge was scolding her in his office. At least he did it in private and not in a courtroom. According to her, there were too many prying eyes and listening ears. Charles didn't look at her anymore, and the few times he looked at her reminded her of the day her whole world collapsed around her. Hearing and seeing a chainsaw burst through the bedroom door scared her more than she could say. She thought Charlie was going to kill her, and, strangely enough, she never thought about Pete from that moment on. She took him to the hospital to avoid Mary. She followed her husband's advice without question, knowing that it was probably the last advice she would ever receive from him. The pickup truck, and the way Charlie ruined it. The little things Charlie had done for her over the years that she thought were nothing. Even the way Charlie made sure Mary didn't get to her. All this gave her many stupid thoughts about where this affair was supposed to lead. It never occurred to her that Charlie would find out about her. In her worst nightmare, she assumed that if he found out, he would be hurt. It would be difficult for them, but they would restore their marriage. But everything did not turn out as she expected. She was still worried about where she could find another job. The information that Mary owned the business and Pete was just an employee also shocked her to the core. First of all, having Pete and her working together in the same office was no longer a good thing. There were rules about what they were supposed to do, and they were both breaking those rules. Secondly, her new boss, Mary, made it clear that she would be fired as soon as possible, so Chris simply quit herself, asking Mary for forgiveness. Charlie had always been the one person she could talk to about everything, and now he's not with her, obviously. And finally, the fact that all the events of that morning were broadcast on television and in everyone's living rooms. The whole world saw what happened, and it was deeply etched into her psyche. She had everything, and what did she give it all for? Sex with Pete wasn't that great. She definitely didn't love him. She remembered that day, and saw the coffee table Charlie had made for her. She loved this table. True, she never showed it, did not care for it. But the fact that Charlie made it for her, spending time and patience on such a thing out of love for her, touched her deeply. Chris thought about it and realized that she had decided that Charlie would always be there for her, and therefore, since it was the absolute truth, she could treat the things he gave her as she pleased, since he would always be there to fix them, make them, or buy her new ones. He knew she loved him, right? She was so selfish. She failed him. I let everyone down. His family, Charles and his family, the judge and his family. Worst of all, old Fraser. This old woman talked to Chris like an adult for many years before she really became one. Now she hardly talks to her at all. Chris remembered the disappointed look on Mrs. Fraser's face when she saw her at the grocery store after that day. She was there with the judge, and both of them stayed away from her, as if she had some kind of contagious disease. Chris hated to see that expression on her face, and all for the sake of having a little fun with Charles's best friend. A best friend who, once he had mastered her sexually, began to make fun of his best friend every time they met. A best friend who leads his friend's wife down a merry path to destruction and then just dumps her like it's all her fault. Looking back, Chris now understood that love was something that was taken for granted when it was given to her, but she did not think about it when she gave it. Just how valuable it really was only dawned on her after she trampled on it. I was sitting on the porch of the house. Josh owned this cottage for many years, and right after I sold the house and Chris and I settled our divorce, he offered it to me. I, of course, knew about the house, but during the registration of ownership, I learned about the 280 hectares of land that came with it. Josh, I told him, are you crazy? This house is worth much more than the $72,000 you offered it to me for. 280 hectares? This is wrong. No way, no way. When I buy it from you, people will think you've lost your mind, gone senile, or something like that. They will think that I took advantage of an old, defenseless man. Hey, wait a minute, son, Josh responded defiantly. First of all, you know as well as I do that I'm out of my mind. There is no problem in my thinking. Secondly, I can sell my property for any price and to whomever I want. Thirdly, I have already rejected 3 offers from developers for much more money than what I am offering it to you for. The reason you're getting it for this price is because I know you, son. I've known you all your life. I know you won't sell it to some developer who will turn it into some kind of housing complex, cut down all the trees and make it modern. I know that you will take care of it, and that you understand what I really want from this property. Josh, you know this property is worth millions. You know it. Only for some developers. She's priceless to you or someone like you, right? Well, of course, but no buts, young man. Its price to you is one that I know you can afford. Its price ensures that no damn developer will ever get their hands on it and ruin it. Also, I really like that you sold your house to this couple. They are very cute. You could have sold it a little more to that other guy. So why didn't you? You know why. That guy is an asshole. He just wanted to make money off the house and decided that because of the divorce, I needed to leave as soon as possible. To some extent, he was right. I really wanted this damn divorce to be settled as quickly as possible. So you could have sold it for a lot more money, but you chose to give it to that young couple with 2 children. Why? Because they reminded me of a time when life was better, and I wanted to help them. I trust that they will do the right thing with this house. Oh, now I understand. Yeah. I always knew you were smarter than most people give you credit for, Charlie. Take care of this place, do you hear? It's nice and quiet here. I can look down from the mountain and see the entire valley, the city lights, and even my old neighborhood. I installed a jacuzzi on one side of the house and a nice veranda on the other. With the other additions I made, it was no longer just a cabin, but I will always call it a cabin. I built a garage separate from the house, but with a covered walkway. With it, an old hip-roofed barn and a workshop. I had a wonderful place to live and relax. The paddock gave the place a rustic feel, and I got it into usable condition. I even rented it out for 6 horses to some city residents from below. For horse riding, they had 280 hectares of private territory, and behind it, of course, a whole forest of the national park. I still work for the same company, doing the same thing, monitoring the sale of timber and leading teams of lumberjacks. Keeping these 6 horses also brings me a good income. Josh still comes to see me on the weekends from time to time, as does the judge and Mrs. Fraser. Of course, my old friends also come. I haven't seen Chris since we signed the papers, and honestly, I miss her. I really miss it. I don't miss what happened, and I wish it would all go away, but at the end of the day, life's lessons are sometimes unforgiving and hard to deal with. I started dating this cute girl after I had been on a few really casual dates. She's a person of her word, and I'm thinking about actually doing it. Keep it with you, that is. I'm still a little shy about being that close to someone, but she's working on breaking down my barriers. Even when she is at work, I can see her because most of the time she is on TV. That's right. The TV reporter who was there the day I cut down the old tree kind of caught my attention. This happened sometime later, and I learned a lot of lessons too, but she was interviewing me for an article about logging. I asked her out, and the rest, as they say, is history. She still had a picture of that old tree lying across those 2 pickup trucks. It made its way onto the internet, being used in several jokes on TV shows and even in funny birthday cards and the like. She managed to sell the rights to it well. I still laugh at Josh when he comes to visit and sees it framed on the mantelpiece. This is because the photo frame is made from the same wood. Instead of the usual gun or other crap hanging above the fireplace, a Jonsered saw hangs in pride of place above it. I never use it to see anything anymore and haven't since that day. But Jessica knows she's still working. I turned her on a couple of times, just playing with her. From time to time, she glances at her and shudders. I asked her about it, but all she says is that she never knew how well this saw could cut wood. She also mentions from time to time that Chris was very stupid for doing what she did and the way she did it. I would agree with her. In the end, Chris lost a damn good pickup truck and ended up with, well, not exactly nothing, but she doesn't have me anymore, and I know that bothers the hell out of her. Jessica, on the other hand, is happy and at peace knowing that I am a one-woman man. Always have been and always will be. I have experience of what life can be like when a person is unfaithful. If you look closely, you can see stains on the wood of the old photo frame. Oil and antifreeze are well absorbed even into undried wood. I made sure when I created and varnished the frame that the stains would remain. It kind of smooths out everything, doesn't it? I know it helps me think about what's important in life. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.